My name is Jen. I am one half of the Frugal Friends Podcast, and I have slides, I have a presentation, but I don't want to spend a lot of time talking at you. I would love to answer your questions, so hopefully under 30 minutes and closer to 20 if we're lucky. But I want to answer your questions about podcasting, not just download growth, but anything that you have questions on. And hopefully these slides will just inspire questions to ask. So that sounds good. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Maggie. So my name is Jen. Again, I am one half of the Frugal Friends Podcast. My co-host, Jill, right here, could not make it. She does not like conferences, so she lets me let my freak flag fly at FinCon. So I am a mom and a wife. I have a 7-month-old. I have a nanny tablet and a 4-year-old. I love running. I hate paying for running photos, so I just screenshot them from the website for these types of presentations. So Jill and I started Frugal Friends about 5.5 years ago, not intending for it to be a business. Her husband wanted to create an audio portfolio so he could get podcast editing jobs. And that's how Frugal Friends was born, and now, 350 plus episodes later, 5 million downloads. We're both doing it full time. Eric's not even editing podcasts anymore. He helps run a podcasting company. So it's been really successful for us, but we've really just enjoyed it. So it's grown into, we've become part of the iHeart podcast network. We've hosted the largest Frugal Living Summit, and we have just this summer started our 3 times a week newsletter called the Friend Letter. It's like morning brew for saving money. So we're really excited about that. And we just love hanging out with each other, and we love helping people find a new way to think about frugality. It's not a means to an end, but as a way to spend without guilt on the things you love, find out what those things are, and say no to the things that you don't love. That social media, family, friends, ads are influencing you to love. So that's what we love to do, and we're maybe like the world's worst podcasters. So ask me your podcasting questions, but take my advice with a grain of salt. This is an intermediate to advanced kind of strategy, and you have all of these slides in the app if you want to look at them there too after. So things you should already have that we're not going to talk about: your why, your niche, your podcast name and cover art, episode frequency, format structure, equipment, and software. I'm not covering any of that. You should have that confidently solidified. And know that not every show needs 1 million downloads to be successful. Podcasts are hard to convert to money on the surface. There are a multitude of ways to monetize a podcast, and you do not need 1 million downloads or 5 million for the majority of them. So your podcast can be even more successful than ours with a fraction of the downloads. But we do love downloads because they help us get sponsors. If you want to join a network, they help that. It's easier to get a book deal or whatever your bigger aspirations are. If you have a legitimate, a good-sized podcast, it's easier to get those deals. And it's just more ears to hear about your products and services. So we do love downloads, but they do not make or break our podcast. There are other metrics we use to determine if the podcast is successful for our business. So right into it. Secret number 1, listeners don't come for you. This was the first thing, and maybe because we weren't starting it for our businesses, we just started our show saying, nobody cares about us. Nobody's heard about us. Nobody cares what we have to say about anything. But they want to solve their problems. They don't care about who you are. They just want to solve their problems. So you could be like the Apple Podcast, Google, just putting up answers to people's problems. And as long as you hook them in less than 5 minutes, I would say that's generous, probably 3 minutes. As long as you hook them quickly, they'll listen to the answer to that problem. If you can't hook them in the first 3 minutes, they probably won't listen to your answer. And I'm so sorry, Steve. Reviews matter. I don't think that they will click to hear that solution unless they see social proof that other people are listening and liking the solutions you're offering to those problems. So they don't come for you, they come for what you offer. But secret number 2, they do stay for you. So once you've hooked them, they like one answer, they're going to try to decide if they want to listen to more answers. Maybe they don't know all the questions to ask, and you are showing them more questions that they need answers to. So a way that we keep listeners, because it's much easier to keep a listener to binge your backlog than it is to find 10 new listeners for every episode, participation. Call-in or email segment, polls, surveys to find out what other questions your early listeners have. These determine future episodes. Building your email list from the first episode, that was a huge help to us because not everybody gets alerts in Apple Podcasts that you have released a new episode. But if you're emailing them about it, then they're getting it on Apple or Spotify, they're getting it in their inbox, and maybe even on social media. So then also start a Facebook group. That's kind of like a sub one. We closed our Facebook group because it got a little much for us, but it was a huge catalyst in the early growth of our show. But again, this was 2018 to 2020. So the landscape for Facebook groups is a little different, but it couldn't hurt to try if it's something that you want. A lot of people will come up on stages and be like, this is how I built this. This is what you should do. But also I built this 5 years ago, and the landscape is dramatically different than it was 2 years ago. So these are all things you should take with a grain of salt and ask your questions on modern day problems, and I'll see if I have an answer to them. And email also allows you to show bonus content, maybe behind the scenes. If you're doing social media, you can paste or copy-paste social media posts so people know you're on Instagram or TikTok. Email is great. Secret 3, you have to know what you're staying for. So a big thing we learned early on in podcasting is that consistency is key. But that's easier said than done. You have to have incentive for staying consistent. So you have to define your success by the numbers. So we live by the 80-20 rule, is that you should play around. 80% of your business in the early days should be playing. 20% is probably making you the money. And you just get closer to honing in on that 20% while still allowing yourself to play and test, but not be married to any of your tests unless they're proving to be in that 20%. So you have to figure out what success looks like for you so that you can get closer and closer to that 20%. So focus on actions you can control. Our download numbers are arbitrary. You can't force somebody. You can force a few people to download your episode, but probably not 1 million. You're not going to be able to pull 1 million phones and download your episode. So focus on actions you can control. So going on other people's podcasts, pitching 10 podcasts a week. That's an action you can control because you're probably going to get one of those guest pitches. So focusing on, if Instagram is the medium that you're using for marketing, focusing on, I'm going to release 1 reel per day, stuff like that. That's the only thing you can control, and that's how you play around and test to see what is going to get you closest to that definition of success. And then, as soon as you can, hire it out. Because those who have to edit their podcast every single week themselves and record it and send out the email and post on social media, doing it all themselves, are less likely to stick with it. I don't know, maybe you are the type of person who is going to do everything yourself and stick with it. That's great for you. I have never edited a single episode of my podcast. If I had to do it one time, I would quit podcasting. I am the worst podcaster. So hire it out as quickly as possible. But how do we do that? Secret 4 is money. I know you weren't expecting that one. Podcasters that don't earn don't scale. And we don't scale for the sake of scaling. We scale with intention. But even if we scale with intention, we have to. So it comes back to this 80-20. Your podcast needs to be the 20% effort that contributes to 80% of your income for it to be worth it. We are not hobby podcasters. We are business owners with a podcast, and you have to figure out why you have a podcast. Your income doesn't need to come directly from advertising on the podcast or like even selling your products on the podcast. You can have a different definition of success. It can be, I was just talking this morning, it could be something that you point your coaching clients back to make your job easier in coaching. There can be a number of reasons, so it doesn't just have to be monetary, but if it lessens your work or gets you closer to whatever your definition of success is, then it's in that 20%. Monetize from the first episode. Who here has a podcast and has not started monetizing? Who here is morally opposed to monetizing their podcast? Great. Oh, that was easy. Probably take less. So you don't have to monetize your audience to monetize your podcast. So something that we have committed to outspokenly this year specifically is that we want our audience, our subscribers, to access us for free at all times. And we want to charge brands for access to our audience. That's our business model now. We've played around with a lot of stuff, and that's what we feel best about. There are so many people that are selling their coaching programs, their courses, their products through their podcasts. That's fantastic. That's a really low barrier to entry to monetizing your show. It's so easy to record a 30-second ad for one of your products or services and put it in the mid-roll in your show. So easy. But if you are like us and you don't want to take money directly from your audience, there are other ways. There are affiliates for free product services. You can get flat rate fees from brands who all they want is, they just want to get in front of your target audience. They don't want them to buy anything. They just want to be educated about it or to sign up for a free newsletter or something. And so there are ways that you can get money from people to hire out things, to make things consistent, without actually it even costing your audience anything. But in order to stay consistent and scale up to 1 million or more downloads, this is something you're going to have to consider. And then also tailoring your podcast or to your product or service or to the types of companies you want advertising in your show. You do not need 10,000 downloads on an episode to get an advertiser. You don't. There are podcasts that get full season sponsorships before they launch. 0 downloads from having relationships with brands and being super niche. This works really well with local podcasts. They can get a local business or collection of local businesses to sponsor their show before they even launch. So you're not going to be working with, Fidelity or BlackRock right off the bat, but there are enough smaller brands where you can combine not just your podcast, but also your newsletter and your social media presence or your YouTube presence or blog. Look at everything you already have to create a package that would be attractive to a brand. Don't just look at all of the different things you've already built as separate entities. Package them all up together and say, this is what I can do for you. Because it's really hard to sell podcast advertising because brands all want proof of conversion. A lot easier to get proof of conversion like blog, even YouTube channel, newsletter, stuff like that. So take everything you already have and present that. as a way. But it's got to be targeted. They've got to see that your audience is looking for exactly what they are pushing, especially if it's a smaller podcast. And then the last one is we grow faster together. This has been a huge secret to our success. The way that a rising tide lifts all boats. So we do a lot of guest swaps. So we go on as many podcasts as we can. So literally all the time we are pitching, so we can go on as many podcasts as we can. And then we will invite those people if they are a good fit for our show. We'll do promo swaps. So we will create a 30-second promo for our show and say, hey, play this in your mid-roll spot. We'll play your 30-second promo. And then there you go. And then we just build relationships. The most profitable things that have ever happened to our business have been because of relationships we built at FinCon. Not like, hey, can I pick your brain? Or how can I do something nice to you so that you can serve me later? But genuine relationships, just because the people here are very cool. Just building genuine relationships. It's a slow burn. It's a slow burn. But you have to be realistic about it. It took us 5.5 years to build up to 5 million. So, and there are a lot of shows that have been around for 5+ years that don't hit this. So you gotta, to some extent, be at the right place at the right time, but you've gotta be at a place at the time to be at the right place at the right time, right? So you've gotta put these things in place that allow you to have the time and the energy that it takes to get these big number downloads. So use the people that you have in this room, build relationships, swap ideas, guest on each other's shows, promo swaps. We do it in newsletter too, so we'll share newsletter opt-ins between each other. We'll promote their opt-in, they'll promote ours. Collaboration beats competition every time. So if you'd like to get content ideas, you can head to frugalfriendspodcast.com and sign up for our friend letter. It's free. It's 3 times a week. And we're happy to get pitches for collaboration at any time. Yes. My goal was 20 minutes. I did it in 18. I hope I didn't talk too fast in that effort. But it's all in these things have worked for us, but we started popping off in 2020 after 2 years of content. And so it's been 3 years since then, and we've been riding that wave through a lot of hard work. So I would love to hear some of the unique struggles you guys are having and kind of just see if we can collectively have any insight. If anyone has questions. Yes? Mm-hmm. What did that look like? And were there inflection points where there were specific things that you actually took credit for where some of that growth from, or was it really successful? So yes, it's been predominantly slow and steady, and just a few things have kind of taken that, it's really a doop, doop, just little things. So 2020, we had a pandemic. And everyone was figuring out how to save money, when they lost their jobs and stuff. So we had 2 years of backlog to offer them. And we did get a feature on Apple Podcasts as a result of that instance. And that lasted for a few weeks. And we were able to retain a lot of the new listeners that we got from that. That was a right place, right time moment. Yeah. I think our Facebook group in that season was also very pivotal. I think listener participation has been a very important part of our growth. Not just we do a grab bag episode once a month, but we have a bill of the week where people can call in and give us a silly bill of the week, So sometimes it's a bill they paid off, a bill they love paying. Sometimes it is their father whose name is Bill. God, one time, and this just is a testament to the power of podcasting, the power of being in someone's space. One time we had a listener call, her father's name was Bill, and he was dying of cancer, and he loved the show, and she loved the show, and she wanted him to hear his bill of the week, before he died. So sometimes you get that stuff, but it is usually a very silly segment where Duck Bill, Buffalo Bills, Bill Clinton, we have custom music that I don't know if that helps us with our downloads, but it is fun to sing. But so people love that. I've seen other just fun, people want to hear their voice on your show. They want to know that you're not out of reach. They want to know you're accessible. And that's a great way to do it with funny, kitschy things. So think of something fun that you could add. In the early days, we did not have consistent listener participation because our listeners were low. So we would be calling our friends and be like, hey, we need a bill of the week right now. So yeah, I think that's something. And then being in a Facebook group was just kind of being accessible with some boundaries. Mm-hmm.
So speaking of collabs and all this, so I have a podcast called Frugal Friends. The tagline is building a business on a bootstrap budget. And I would love you and your co-host or whoever would come on my show sometime.
Deal. Yeah. Jen at frugalfriendspodcast.com.
Okay. I will reach out.
All right. Yes?
How were you able to monetize after the first episode? Where things that you did to get stuff on the
Good question. So the question was, how were we able to monetize from the very first episode? So we started right out with sponsors. We had affiliate links. So at the top of every episode, we did not know what a mid-roll was, or we did not know how to podcast. But at the beginning of every episode, we would have this episode is brought to you by fake plants. Fake plants don't grow. But if you want your savings to grow, you should put it in a high-yield savings account. Right now, we're loving the one at CIT. You can go to frugalfriendspodcast.com/CIT, open a high-yield savings account, so your emergency fund can grow faster than a fake plant. We still do that. So we put a lot of our own stuff in there now, but we were doing affiliates like that from the very first episode. And then also, if you have products or services, 30-second, separately recorded ad that you can place in a mid-roll so that you just have that spot that your listeners are used to. You definitely want to play around when you're starting for what format feels right. We have very rigidly defined sections of our show that our listeners have come to expect. And so when we pop in a mid-roll ad, it's not abrupt, it's very natural. And they are used to hearing it. Doesn't matter if it's for you or somebody who's paid a flat fee to be there, it's there. So that's how we did it up front.
And so you reached out to CIT first and now get the link for...
No. So affiliate marketing, there I'm sure are other sessions in here that can teach you about affiliate marketing, but you usually can go through an Impact or an Aragon or a CJ and get those links. Yeah. So, but I would brush up on affiliate stuff for that. Yes.
How will your affiliate performance for you starting out?
So how well do the affiliates kind of perform? It depends on the affiliate. A lot of it was testing out at the beginning because we didn't know what our listeners were going to respond to. CIT is our best performing affiliate now because our audience of Frugal Friends loves saving. They love emergency funds. Everyone, no matter where they're at, should have an emergency fund in a high yield savings account. So that one has always, and we haven't always done CIT. We'll do kind of whichever one has like, we look at APY and then also like no monthly balance fees, minimum open, and also what they pay us. So we'll look at all those to decide what we are recommending. But most people are recommending CIT. So it's also, if they listen to other shows, they're probably going to have heard about it. So that one's our best converting one right now. And it just depends. Like, there are ones that will be important to us, like investing platforms and life insurance. And we want to promote those more because we think more people should hear about them and be familiar with them. But our audience is listening to us for specific things. They're listening to us in a season for a reason. And we're not going to be something else to them because there are a ton of great investing and retirement podcasts. There are a ton of great general personal finance podcasts. They will go there for that. Doesn't mean we don't have any investing or insurance content. We love to talk about how other things can be looked at and executed frugally or in this like values-based spending mentality. But we don't promote them as affiliates because we really want to promote the same affiliates over and over and over. So we'll test, but if they don't, we know what's in line with our content now and what affiliates are going to convert at this point. So, but in the early days, you just kind of play around because you don't fully know what your audience really wants. You also probably don't know what your like niche is. Like, we all start out pretty general and then kind of find our way, which I know frugality is, a niche, but we did start out pretty broad under the label of frugality and have just gotten like nichier and nichier. And I know they say to do the opposite, but it can be done any way you want it. Yeah.
I would love to hear about joining the network and if you pitched them or if they came to you, and then now that you're in a network, like, do they control everything you guys do? I feel like this isn't really talked about the network.
Right. Fantastic. Yes, I would love to disclose as much as I can about that. So the question was like, what's the story around the network? So us joining the network, we pitched. We did not think we were good enough to join a network. We did not think we were big enough. I think we had over 2.5 million downloads, and we were like, I don't think we're good enough. But that came, so I was talking to Joel and Matt from How to Money on iHeart, like just kind of being like, hey, what's your experience with this? Like, do you think it's something that would be right for us? And he just like, without asking, connected us to them. So again, building relationships for the sake of building relationships and growing together instead of building relationships for what can I get from you, what can you give me, is crucial to all of us growing. Like, even in the same niche, we all want to grow. Rising tide lifts all boats. So it worked out for us. It was just in a time that iHeart was actually it was acquiring a lot of podcast rights. They are no longer, I'm sorry. I already tried with a friend who has 5 million downloads on her show and didn't have any luck. But, so it was a process where we didn't know what we were getting into. Like, they sent us numbers and contracts, and we're like, who? And so we actually consulted with another friend that we met from FinCon who knows all this stuff, has sold businesses, and he sold startups, and he gets this stuff. And he was also like in talks with iHeart, didn't end up going with them, but so he kind of like walked us through his deal, like what he was offered. Again, that was a relationship from here that we didn't, we just like met randomly. So we were able to negotiate because of that relationship. We didn't know what we could negotiate, but because of that relationship, we were able to negotiate essentially full autonomy aside from them just selling advertising on the show. And we even negotiated down the number of ads per spot and they don't touch or look at anything. We bring our own production. They market our show once a year, a few times more if we send them like extra episodes. But yeah, so that's kind of the deal around that. But there are a ton, so we were negotiating with several other networks at the same time so that we could kind of see what else was out there. And there are still other networks that are, I don't know if acquiring is the right word, but working with other shows, and definitely having more downloads helps, because 2021 was kind of a Spotify just led stuff, and people were like picking up podcasting stuff left and right, and Meghan Markle went off the rails, and it's not as easy anymore. So, but it still happens. There are a lot of smaller networks, not like just the Westwood ones, but we've got Acast, Audio Boom. I have opinions about Audio Boom, but I won't share them. So yeah, you can look at the people at FinCon who are on networks and just like be intentional about like talking to them and seeing how they like their network and saying like, this is a goal of mine, like what would you say I should do to, get myself in a position to get here. And anyone will be happy to tell you that. So I would say that Acast is one we looked at and we really liked, but just the other deal was just a better deal for us. So I'm not sure what else is out there. But yeah, there's still taking on more podcasts. Yes? How much of a focus do I put on show notes? Very little. It is something that we like to have, because if we push back to a particular episode in our newsletter, or if we're talking about a particular episode, that's the link we share, because we'll just have all the links to the different podcast players in our player on the show notes. So we have them basically just to have the player on the top that you can either play it from your from right there, or you can head to Apple or Spotify or whatever. But we do go through, like our content manager will go through each episode to make sure there's no weird things in it, and she will just put a summary up. Website is not one of our channels that we're prioritizing. But I know like Nick Loper, podcast and website are his two main channels, and so he really does every show notes like a blog post. So, but he doesn't really touch, Instagram or TikTok, So you just got to have to figure out what's working for you, 80-20, what's your domain authority. If you got a really good one, like, lean in. But it doesn't hurt us to not focus on show notes. Yes?
Do you have any recommendation on how to engage your listeners? I have a podcast, my podcast is in Spanish, and I have been having the challenge of engaging the listeners like on public places.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have plays that when you call and leave a voice message, I have a public, well, it's a public, like people can join a Facebook group, like a public group. But I have the challenge that people always go to my DMs or my emails. So is there any recommendation that you have, like how to engage them in tools, in other, like more public?
Yeah, so I would say definitely read your DMs and your emails on the show first. Use what you've got at first. That's the biggest recommendation. Don't force people to be somewhere that they are not. It's only when you get a little bigger and they're everywhere that you want to corral them. So I would say start there. We do polls in our email. So we use Beehive, and they have a native poll drop-in. And but before then, we would just use Google Forms, and we would say, like, click this link and vote on our, December episodes, or, whatever you would like us to, what digital product you'd like us to give away next, or something like that. That was also good. Like, Google Forms allows people to write a sentence or two. You can choose long answer or short answer. Choose short answer, and they can leave a short answer just saying anything. We'll read reviews. Reviews are a very common thing. Start with reviews. Just say, leave a review. We love 5 stars, but we won't force you, and we would love to share it. And we say, this is how we position. We kind of help people leave a review. And I know some people go even further with a template, but we say, if you like the show, please leave a rating and review. It helps new listeners know what the show is about, know what they're getting into, so that they don't waste their time on a show that's not for them. So now all of our reviews are super helpful. Be like, I like this about the show. The show does this, and I really like this about it. And so we don't want any more 1-star reviews because people don't like that we review Google articles. That's the whole premise of the show, is going through what's on the internet and telling you if it's, good or BS. So we don't want to get a 1-star review for the format that works for us. So that we've kind of helped people think of something, because when you're just sitting with a blank screen with a flashing cursor, that's intimidating. Or you can ask, like, hey, send me a DM about what your favorite thing is about my episodes from the last month. This is really great if you're testing something. I've been trying something new for the last month. You don't even have to tell them what it is. I've been trying something new. Please send me a DM. Tell me what's your favorite thing about the show in the last month. This would be great in stories, because some people don't even want to DM, but if you leave it in your stories, and they can just respond in the stories. So, yeah. It's too short. Oh, yeah.
What is the typical format of your show? Like, are you guesting, a guest on there? Are you on solo episode?
Yeah, so we have, since it's 2 of us, and we always have 2 schedules to coordinate, and I highly, highly recommend co-hosting if you can. It's fantastic. Your listeners get double the amount of brain power. If one of you is off, the other one's usually on. I know this wasn't your question, I will answer, but co-hosting is fantastic. Doesn't even have to be like a consistent schedule. It can just be like a when you can get the guest. It's just great. But so since we have 2 schedules to coordinate, we only do a guest every 3rd episode. And we did this for 5.5 years. And the first time we messed it up because we got too close to recording or release date, and the person didn't show up that was supposed to be on the show. The first time we broke the pattern, it broke me. And Jill was like, I didn't even know we had a pattern, Jen. She was like, the pattern doesn't matter. Nobody knows we have a pattern. And I was like, they know. They have to know. And then I got a DM later that was like, I had no idea you had a pattern. And I was like, whatever. So it is, but it's similar for both. So we have our intro, and if we had to do a first impression, they would not. We wouldn't get good feedback. So you do what you want. That's what I have to say. But I will announce the episode. So episode 323, how ChatGPT can save you money. And then we go into our little trailer thing, which is the music with the, save money, embrace simplicity, and live a richer life. Yeah. And then that goes out, and then we explain our purpose behind why we're doing this episode. So this is what we're talking about. I'm really excited because This is how it's different from maybe a similar episode we've done in the past. This is why it's important. And then, but first, this episode is brought to you by Real Plants. And then we do 2 similar episodes. We say, if you like this episode, head back to our archives and we try to make them within the last 2 years, so they don't have to scroll too far back. Check out episode 183, why AI is going to take over the world. And then we go into our first article, and then second article, and then we have like a cheesy transition to the bill of the week. And then we have a scary transition to the lightning round, which is the vulnerability segment. So this is another key thing. The first part of our episodes are always content for the person listening. It's not about us. We will infuse, obviously, what we think about these things, our experiences. But we save the more personal stuff and the more personal stories till that lightning round. So we'll ask, how has ChatGPT saved you money this week? And so we can give real personal stories at that time. So the first part is judgy, and the second part is personal. No, it's not judgy, but we try to keep the personal stuff to a little later. I once listened to a show, the first 5 minutes was them talking about what happened when they were making their coffee in the morning. And I was like, I came here I wanted to hear about this decluttering thing. What does this have to do with what I came here for? And so we'll never do that. So we'll do the lightning round, and then we'll do thank you for reviewing the show, here's a review. And then we'll play our outro music, and then we'll do an after show, which is purely for our entertainment, where Jill makes fun of me for liking Carrabba's. So that is the format. And then instead, when we were doing an interview, instead of 2 articles, it's 4 questions. So, yes?
What is your podcast production workflow from the very beginning to finally editing uploading?
All right, so I bulk plan the episodes so that they flow nicely, so that we're not repeating topics close to each other, but they have a nice flow throughout the quarter. We will then put them in a sauna so that everybody gets their job to do. Goldie will make the outline, do the research on the articles. I'll go through it most of the time. Goldie is our content manager, podcast manager, our live manager. She runs our lives as it relates to the podcast. She's everything. And then we will record. We try to record a month out. So we try to do things very early because Jill travels a lot. I have 2 young children, so we just want to batch and get it out of the way as early as possible. So then we send our stuff to a production company, and this is where it's made it not recreatable for most people, because remember how in the beginning I told you we started this show so Eric could have a podcast editing portfolio? Well, he started editing podcasts and just got better and better, so now he's one of the co-equity owners in this podcast production company. So they now produce our podcast. So, but we would send it to an editor, and they would do it, and they get it back to us. Goldie goes through, she makes show notes, and then publishes. Our social media manager will post about it. We have a carousel that goes out on the day it releases, and the next day we release a clip of it. And we only do that so people can see our faces. It does not help us get downloads. That's just something that we can do at this size. We can hire somebody to post on social media for us. So we do. We don't want to be strangers.
You mean the social media?
No, not at all. No. if we wanted it to, we would have to put more intentionality behind it. So like Allison does a great job of promoting her show on her Instagram, but it's just like not where we're putting our effort right now. And I don't know how much it helps with downloads.
It's helped more since using ManyChat.
Yeah, so using tools like ManyChat in addition to just the posting.
And not doing just like cookie cutter things that you would find on Canva, but actually like
Intentional creating custom content for the platform.
ManyChat.
Many, M-A-N-Y, chat. Yeah. But we do, Instagram is something, and TikTok is something we always want to get more into. It's just a timing thing, having no time or desire to have time. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you're using social media and just your personal views on it lately? Because it can be I just feel like there's more of a
Oh, Maggie.
I'm curious with the business side, but also your philosophical.
Okay. Wow. Well, I don't know if my philosophical views are relevant for the recording, but I love using social media as a tool for helpful short form content. And there are some content creators that are gifted short form video and content creators. They are just gifted. I have a hard time keeping my podcast under an hour. It's not my gift. But just because it's not my gift doesn't mean I am absolved from participating. So we view it, so most of our audience, we've polled them, and most of them are on Instagram and Facebook. We do skew more older millennial and Gen X. We want to get more younger millennials, and so that's kind of why we want to explore TikTok more. But I want to be accessible to our listeners on days that we don't post episodes. And people at max probably listen to like 2 episodes a week, but they're on Instagram like every day. So it's something where I want to be top of their mind, and I want to remind them, hey, we had a new episode release. Like maybe you didn't see it in your podcast player or your email, but you're here. So here is the episode. And if you didn't see it yesterday, here it is again. So, and people just didn't know who Jill and I, like which one was which. People think I'm Jill all the time. And when they see our faces, they're always like, oh my gosh, I had you guys mixed up. So that was another like just nuanced reason that we started doing it. But we do want to put more helpful extra content up there. So like a few times we've put my meal prepping videos of like me meal prepping stuff to help people, you know, like if you hate shredding chicken with forks, try this. And that has done well. So we may experiment more with that. But I mean, ideally, social media has its benefits and its flaws. And you don't have to be there if you don't want to be, but be somewhere else in addition to the podcast, because they're only listening to you 1 day a week, and you want to be somewhere else the other 6. You just have to choose what platform that is, and I think social media is easiest. For all of its difficulties, it is very easy to reach your audience on social media. So, mm-hmm. I think we're posting 5 or 6 days a week. So we have 2 episodes a week. So we do 2 carousels and 2 reels from the episode. And we use Riverside. Riverside has this fantastic new feature where they do magic clips. And you just press a button and it chooses clips from the episode. And they are always all random and wrong. But it gives you a starting point. you can look at the transcript and kind of see where you want to start and end it. So that has made it. We did not do that until Riverside got that feature. And while you're recording, actually, if you were like, oh, dang, that was good, you can like mark it in the recording too. So, but I never think about that. So then our social media manager might make one static image. We'll record 2 reels. So 1 week I'll record 2 reels, and then Jill will record 2 reels the next week. And those kind of align with the friend letter. So we'll talk about one freebie day, like, you know, it's National Coffee Day on this day. Here's where you can get free coffee. And that's content we already wrote about in the friend letter, so we just transfer it to a reel. And then Wednesdays are our savings hack one. So like I just wrote about how to get like all clad style stainless steel pans, you know, same quality, lower price, and why it's important to buy for quality and life over cheap. So that would be another reel I would do. So I think 6 days. So, yeah, but only because we have help. Only because we have help. That's why hiring out things is super important, and that's why money is important. Well, it's almost time to go. Actually, the session is over. Thank you guys for coming.